It'll take you there, or you can go to events on your app and look for the Glory English Ministry Gym, and it'll do that as well too, okay? So, winning the war for your mind. There always is a battle going on. There's always a war going on. This morning, we had something happen in our house, and it was not a major thing, but it was just kind of a typical thing. It was something that happens all the time. And what happened was this. One of my children got up, started reading a book, laying on the couch, arranged the pillows in a certain way, had a little blanket to put over his feet because, he felt a little bit chilly. And he was enjoying reading his book. But then it came time to eat breakfast, so he got up to eat breakfast. And he went over and sat at the table. And the other one, then, guess what he did? He ran and went over and got on the couch, those two pillows, that blanket, and everything else, because his brother had left. So then it was a fight. And the fight was over the book they were reading, because they both wanted to read the same book. It was a fight over who got to sit on the couch and who didn't get to have to sit on the couch and everything else. And they, I didn't see it, but I heard it. Apparently they hit each other at one point and things like that. It was a war. Sometimes we feel like that in our minds as well. It's just constantly a war. And it can be from small things to large things. We just prayed for Howard. Can you imagine the war that's going on in Howard's mind right now, dealing with all these things? Am I making the right decision or not? Am I going the right direction or not? What's this going to happen, for the future of my family? All these type of things. And he may make a decision, and then later it's like, oh, maybe you should have done something different. We all experience that. And so we're looking at that, and we're considering that, and we're considering what's going on in our mind, and how can we get a hold of this? How can we captivate our thoughts and our ideas so that they work well for us, not against us? And we said that there's a couple different things. We said that your mind is a battlefield. And I like how Greg Rochelle wrote this, and so we just stole it straight from him. It says most of life's battles are won or lost in the mind. They tell you that in sports all the time. You picture victory. You picture being able to accomplish something. You picture doing something the right way, and it will come. The second thing, the life you have is often a reflection of the thoughts that you think. Okay? You want a joyful life? Start filling your mind with more joyful thoughts, with more positive thoughts, with more exciting thoughts. And we can look at this, and we've looked at it in the past few weeks, considered a bunch of different things, but those are the two statements we're kind of working off of. So there's two sets of verses, too, that we're working off of, 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5, and Romans 12, 2. Let's read those real quick. It says, "For we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, we have divine power to demolish strongholds." And remember, we said in strongholds that when we're talking about those thoughts, those negative thoughts, those bad ideas, those bad ways, those bad habits, everything that we have that distracts us from the life that God wants for you, a full and abundant life. So we're attacking those strongholds, and we're attacking those in a godly way. It says we demolish the arguments, we demolish every pretension that sets us up against the knowledge of God. Paul is very specific here. This is not lay back and let things happen. This is aggressive, attack it, go defeat it. But not with your power, with God's power. We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. There's action in that, and action in what goes on. Then Romans 12:2, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. You don't have to do it on your own. God is there to help you. God is there to give you the power to do it. You'll learn how to know God's will for you, which is good, pleasing, and perfect will. And I gave you this quote last week, and I like this out of this book. It says, God was so serious about capturing our thoughts and renewing our minds that he gave us science as an encouragement. And we looked at a lot of science last week. well, not a lot of science. We looked at the basics, beginnings of neuroscience last week, and we defined a few things, and we talked about a few things, and what these things and how they made us be able to change our thinking, and how science says you can change your thinking. And it's not the case where you can't teach an old dog new tricks. This goes on your whole lifetime up until the time you die, and then your brain cells die, and I guess it doesn't happen anymore after that. But as long as you're alive, you can change, and you can change your thought patterns and the way you think, okay? And it's what we learned. We said, we learned about neural pathways and how your neurons, they fire little electrical signals from place to place, and every time you have a thought, you fire a new pathway, and if you repeat that thought over and over and over again, it becomes more permanent. In fact, we said that there are lesser pathways and there are dominant pathways. And the lesser pathways, if you don't repeat that thought, they will go away quickly. Often, science has shown within 48 hours, that thought will go away. That pattern that was established in your mind will fade. And these glial cells, I read some more about them, and they're really fascinating what they do and how they control things and how they basically manage all this and make it work in your mind. And when we look at that, it's just amazing because you think about how God created that. God put that all in place. God, when he created humankind, when he created us and he looked into the future and he said, I'm going to give them a choice. I know they're going to make bad choices. I also want to put something in there so that they can change those choices and they can change those thoughts and they can establish new patterns and new thoughts in their lives. That's what the science shows us. At least to me, that's what the science shows us. Okay, and then we talked about neuroplasticity, and we said basically it's your ability of your brain to create new thinking, to create new pathways, to change, to adapt, okay? And but we said again, in order to do this, in order to change how you think things, you have to think things over and over and over again and repeat them over and over again. All right, then we talked about cognitive bias, and it says how you affect how you make decisions and can lead to difficulties in your career and personal life. Now look what this next one says. I like this. If we have a cognitive bias, we may interpret information based on our own beliefs and experiences. Now, most of us think that's a good thing, and it is a good thing. However, remember getting our wires crossed we talked about last week? If we get our wires crossed, and if we get a wrong thought pattern, a wrong idea, a wrong concept in our mind, it can be negative. Sometimes the ways that we interpret information may or may not be accurate. And those patterns those crossed wires can be caused by many things. Okay? They can be caused by things that happened to you as a child. They could be things that are going on right now. They could be things throughout different life, different experiences that you had. And like we said, those can be good, okay? We learn if something is red and glowing, it's hot, not to touch it, right? Well, that in a sense is a cognitive bias, but it's a good one. But we develop many negative ones too. Maybe you had a relationship in the past with someone that was bad. A bad relationship with a boss. And so you may go into your next job or your next place thinking, oh, my boss is going to be bad just like the last boss was going to be. Maybe you had a bad relationship with your parents as a youngster, okay? Or brothers or sisters. And so it's hard to let go of those things, but we can change because we need to change, okay? Now, psychology gives us some things. They say, hey, this is how you do. You break this bias. You be aware of it. You consider the factors that are influencing your decision. You challenge your bias, and you challenge other people's biases as well. Because it's important because we tend to start thinking like the people that are surrounding us. So if we see that in other people, we need to address it. The second year I was here in Taiwan, I was teaching at a private Christian school. There was lots of things going on in that Christian school. There was lots of problems going on in that Christian school. And a lot of the teachers and I hung out together. I say a lot of them. There's about 10 of us that hung out together, okay? And so we had this deal where every Thursday night we go out to eat together. Fridays, Saturdays, on the weekends we do things. We go to the beach together. We go to the mountains together. We do all things together. And so it got to be kind of where, because of all the problems that were going on, it became very negative type in environment. And one of the teachers, he said, hey, on Friday night, let's do this. When we first get together, we have an hour to gripe to each other about the school and about our work and about everything else that's happening. He said, but after that first hour, nothing about work the whole rest of the weekend when we're together. And most of us said that is a great idea, because we found ourselves being so negative that it was taking away from our joy of being able to go and do things. So as a group, we made a decision. We challenged the bias that we had going on that was developing, and we changed it into something different, something that was positive, something that helped us. And you can do that. Look what Dr. Caroline Leaf says. She says, the ability to quiet your mind, to focus your attention on the present issue, to capture your thoughts and dismiss the distractions that come your way is an excellent and powerful ability that God has placed within you. She's a psychologist. Does a lot. I don't know if any of you looked her up this week, but she does a lot of good work. And Kate gave us some things on Gem Adventures. You can go read those things. But she's also a Christian. And she says the ability that every person has is the ability to change. And God has given you that ability. So how do we go about changing? Well, this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the last thing. And I put it underneath the neuroscience, but you can call this psychology, which is a science too. But we're going to talk about reframing. And again, I am not going in depth there. I'm not going to show you how to do it, but I'm going to try to show you the importance of it. You go find out what it is more. You find out how to do it. Meet a professional if you need to. But you can do this on your own. And there is called reframing. And reframing does this. It involves what it says, constantly altering the way we view and interpret situations. Okay, now, I'm a little bit simple, so I have to put things in simpler ideas. It's a natural process which you engage intuitively. That helps me because this is not something you have to learn. You're doing it already. You just don't know it. Why you're doing it? Because you have all those neural pathways in your mind that it's been set before, and you're doing these things. You're looking at these things. Look at this next 3 or 4 statements. It says, at its core, reframing involves consciously altering the way we view and interpret situations. To me, that's the key. You have to be aware that you need to change the way you're interpreting the situation. Okay? Look what it says. This does not mean lying to yourself. Okay? If you feel like it's really hot in here right now, it doesn't do any good to lie to yourself. If you feel like it's really cold right now, you need to change your way of thinking. No, okay? It doesn't. But that's a very simple, very stupid, illustration. But you don't lie to yourself. It's about choosing alternate perspectives that can lead to more positive and empowering understanding of the events. You see, we often choose to look at things and how they affect me. And we often kind of take that defensive posture that I need to protect myself. I need to help myself. We've been taught, especially in society now and culture now, that we need to take care of ourselves, number one. And so oftentimes what we need to do is start challenging that idea and challenging that thinking and trying to think about it and looking at it from a different perspective. In a different idea. Maybe a perspective of a coworker, a perspective of a son or daughter, of children, if you have children, of a boss, of a different perspective even from where you're standing and with the way you look at things. Okay? So, Howard, I didn't ask you if I could use this, but Howard right now is trying to get this business going. So right now, you can have 2 different perspectives. Well, you can have lots of perspective. One perspective is it's too hard, it's too much work, it's never going to work, it's going to fail, I can't do it, blah, blah. And then what happens? No business. But you know what Howard told me, though? We're having troubles. It's not moving as fast as we want it to, but it is moving forward. I'm maintaining hope. I'm reading Scripture. I'm relying on God. I'm doing these things. He has framed it in a positive way. He's going forward, not backwards in his thinking and how he's doing it. So when we talk about reframing, those are the things that we need to do. And the third thing says, it says the technique recognizes that our perceptions significantly influence our emotional well-being and behavior. And that's, several things I read, psychology, that all comes back to this. How you perceive things makes a difference. It can make a difference in your physical health, of course, your mental health, your emotional health, all that as well, okay? All right, so why use reframing? I'm going to give you 6 quick things here. I'm just going to read through them. These all came out of some of the reading I did, just to kind of give you the idea why this is important, because some of you are like me. Sometimes when you hear things, you're like, oh, that's a good idea, but I don't want to take the time to do that or the effort to do that. This is important. It's important for all of us, okay? It promotes stress reduction. I don't know about you, but I need this. Reframing it enables you to view challenging situations from a different angle, reducing stress and anxiety associated with negative thoughts. Now, what was kind of funny was I finished up this part of the sermon Friday morning. I left where I was at a coffee shop, and I left that coffee shop, and as I'm walking out of the coffee shop, it started raining. And I didn't have an umbrella, and I was about a 10 to 15 minute walk away from the car, and I dodged underneath trees, underneath overhangs, everything else, and I got there. I got there, fairly dry, okay? And thankfully it didn't rain hard. It was just a light rain. So I got in the car, and the second I got in the car, I looked up, and I was like, oh, there's parking tickets on my car. Not just one. I expected to have one there from parking on the street, but there was 2. And one was a whole lot different than the other. So I went and picked up the parking tickets, and I looked at them, and one was what I expected, but the other was something different. And I had parked in a 1-hour limited parking space, and I'd been there 4 hours. I didn't realize it was a 1-hour space when I left the car there. I was like, oh, okay, well, it's all right. At least I'm not soaking wet. At least it didn't come down pouring around. Started the car, started to leave. Well, I hadn't even started to leave yet, but even before I started to leave, there was another car honking its horn at me because they were wanting into the spot that I was at. And I was just like, arr, but I was like, okay, I left. I was like, yeah, all right. So it was raining. It was about noontime. My youngest son finishes school on Friday at noon, and I knew his grandma was going to go pick him up. Nancy's mom was going to go pick him up, and it was raining, and I was close, so I just called her and said, hey, I'm going to come by and pick you up because it's raining. She said, thank you. I went and go pick them up. I picked them up, and a motorcycle almost hit us. I went and dropped them off at Nancy's mom's house because Jonathan was staying the afternoon there, and that was all fine. But from that next 5 to 10 minutes, there was 3 times I almost got in an accident. People cutting me off, people running through a stop sign. And I was just like, what is going on here? And I started having all these negative thoughts. I hate driving. I hate driving in Taiwan. I don't want to be in Taiwan because I hate driving in Taiwan. Why do I have to deal with this? It's so hot out. Why is it so hot and muggy? And then I realized, you need to put in practice what you're preaching this week. So, God, thank you it wasn't heavy rain. God, thank you that I really enjoyed the time at the coffee shop and got a lot of the sermon done, and I'm actually a little ahead of schedule. Thank you for that. God, thank you that we have a car that I could go pick up Popo and Jonathan in so that they didn't have to walk in the rain and go home in the rain. God, thank you for this. God, thank you for that. And guess what? My whole perspective on life changed with just in a few minutes because I took the negative thoughts that were causing me a lot of stress and I turned them into positive thoughts. I thought about how glad I am to be in Taiwan. I thought about lots and lots of other good things. We use it to do that. And I'm not going to give you an example for every one of these, okay? Enhances problem-solving skills by challenging automatic negative thoughts. Reframing opens your mind to creative solutions. It literally causes you to think about things more. Okay? Improving your ability to navigate and to overcome challenges. It fosters emotional well-being. It says it encourages a shift in focus from negative to positive emotion, contributing to emotional resilience and overall well-being. Okay? It empowers individuals. It just basically makes you feel better, but let's read what it says. It provides a sense of control over thoughts and reactions, empowering individuals to adapt a more productive mindset in the face of adversity. It strengthens relationships. Reframing promotes understanding and empathy by sometimes encouraging a positive interpretation of another's actions, fostering healthier and more meaningful relationships. Okay? Important things, important reasons for us to do it. Now, I went through, and we're going to talk, specifically about some reframing. But I started thinking about Bible stories and thinking about how can I see reframing in stories I never saw reframing before. And this is the first story that came to my mind. It's the story of Naaman. And you find the story in 2 Kings chapter 5. And if we find Naaman, he has a skin disease. He has leprosy, okay? He is not an Israelite. He is not a believer. He's from another country. And you find that in verse 1. But he had a servant girl that was a slave that was taken from Israel. And she told her master's, she told Naaman's wife, I think it was, that there is a prophet in Israel that could heal him. So she shared that information. So Naaman hears that information. Now, first of all, I think we can even say he probably reframed a little bit in that point, because here he is. Naaman is a general in the army. He is a man of power. He's a man of influence. He's a man of property. He has wealth. He has everything, but he was willing to listen to the advice of the servant girl. And I was like, that was kind of amazing in itself. But he goes to Elisha, and when he goes to Elisha, Elisha said, hey, go dip yourself 7 times in the river Jordan. Okay? Now, there was a couple of things about that. When he went to go see Elisha, he first went to the king of Israel, and the king of Israel sent him. And you can read all the story in there, okay? But when he went to Elisha, Elisha didn't go out to meet Naaman. Elisha sent his servant out to tell Naaman to go do this. Naaman got angry about it. He got angry because Elisha didn't come see him. He got angry because he was told to go dip in the river Jordan. And look what he says. Naaman went away angry and said, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call in the name of his Lord his God. In other words, I am so important. I am such a great man. I have the power. I have the influence. He doesn't even have the courtesy to come out and see me. See, he's got a negative mindset here. His cognitive biases are putting him into that defensive, that angry type of set. Then he goes on and says, he said, then call in the name of his Lord, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy. He already had in mind what Elisha was going to do. He already determined, this is how Elisha is going to heal me. See, he's already got a pattern set there. Are not the Abana and the Fossor rivers of Damascus better than all the rivers of Israel? The Jordan is nasty. It's dirty. It's full of everything else. I don't want to go dip there. Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? So he went off in a rage. Now, here's what's interesting to me. His servants that were with him challenged him to reframe the events. See, he was looking at it all from a perspective of how great I am, how wonderful I am. This is who I am. This is what should be happening. But look what it says. His servants went to him and said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you have not done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? And what they're saying is, hey, what he told you is actually a pretty simple thing. Why would you be willing to do something that was difficult? If the prophet said, you must go out and defeat 10,000 other armies, go do this, he would have went and done it, no thoughts. I'm up to the challenge. Why are you not up to the challenge? And it caused Naaman to rethink. It caused him to reframe everything that was going on. Okay? So he reframed and he reformed. Look at this. He went down, dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. Okay, somebody must have dumped a lot of moisturizer into the Jordan that morning or something. I don't know, okay? But he was clean. And it goes on. He says, then Naaman and all of his attendants went back to the man of God. And he stood before him saying, now I know there is no God in the world except for the one in Israel. See, not only did he reframe things, and he did what Elisha told him, but that caused him also to see the power, the truth, the reality of God. And so it reformed him. Embrace reframing as a tool for positive change and recognize that it's not about what happens to us, but it's how we perceive the situation that truly matters, and this is empowering. Naaman was empowered because he changed his perception of the situation. He was healed. He had found God. It was a great thing. You go read the rest of that story, and Naaman is even thinking about already how he's going to deal with his new belief in God versus the beliefs of his master, the king that he served back home, and different things, okay? Here's another story. Elisha challenged his servant to reframe his cognitive bias in 2 Kings chapter 6, okay? So here's what happened. I forget who it is, but somebody's really mad at Elisha because Elisha had predicted doom. So they sent their soldiers out to go kill Elisha. It was one of the kings. I can't remember if it was king of Israel or king of Judah one. I think it was king of Israel. So Elijah and his servant had stopped overnight in the shack, and they had found him that night. They surrounded it. So look what it says. It says, when the man of God got up and went out early in the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. So his servant asked, oh, no, my Lord, what shall we do? Oh, so here's the servant's perspective. The servant's perspective, he's looking at everything. He's saying, this is so bad. It's so terrible. My life is done. I'm gone. I didn't get to say goodbye to my dog. I didn't get to say goodbye to my wife. I didn't get to say goodbye to all these other people I love. There's so many things in the world I wanted to do and everything. He's having all these thoughts because he's looking at this army. But Elijah challenges him to reframe it and to rethink it. He says, don't be afraid. So first of all, Elisha's saying, hey, who do we trust in? We trust in God. So don't be afraid. We follow God. God will protect us. God will honor us. God will provide for us. God works everything for the good of those who trust in him. Now, he didn't have Romans 8:28 yet, but he was saying that. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Now, the servant right now is kind of like, 1, 2. Elisha, what's wrong with you? Okay? But Elisha prayed, open his eyes, Lord, so he may see. So the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. See, he was focused on that army and what that army was going to do to them, that he lost his focus on God. And Elisha said, open his eyes, let him see. And what we need to remember sometimes is that there are things we can't see. Paul says in Ephesians, this battle we fight, there's powers and principalities, but we can't see. They're there. They're fighting for us and against us. Change your perspective. Take a different look at things. Try to look at it through God's eyes and see what God has to say. So how do we frame? Reframing is a different way of looking at a situation, relationship. I think you got that already. We said that like 10 times already, okay? So you think first of all, here's 3 easy steps. Thank God for what didn't happen. Okay? That's what I went through when I went that day on Friday. I just started going through all the things that didn't happen. And, the motorcycle didn't hit us. We didn't hit the motorcycle. The car cut me off. Didn't do that. All this other stuff. Okay? Look what 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 says. It says, rejoice always. Pray continually. Give thanks for all circumstances. Not just the good ones, for all circumstances. For this is God's will for you in Jesus Christ. This way you do not quench the Spirit, because you keep your focus on God when you're doing these things. Okay? So thank God for what didn't happen. Second thing is practice pre-framing or framing, okay? And that means just beforehand, before you even get into a situation, Think it through and how it may happen. Reframing is a technique used to get someone to see a situation from a specific viewpoint. It's very instrumental in influencing people and it's deciding how you look at a situation in advance. Okay? You have a meeting, you're going to go into that meeting. You have an idea already what that meeting's going to be or how people are going to react to that meeting. You think about how am I going to react to that person when this happens. Okay? So you decide that in advance and you think about it in advance. I like what this psychologist says. It says the problem is not the fact that your mind gives you negative thoughts. The problem is that you take your mind so seriously. So we're all going to have negative thoughts. But sometimes what we need to do is just remember that and remember that we're going to have those negative thoughts and that our thoughts are just thoughts. Sometimes we think our thoughts are facts. I walk into a room, I stand in front of a group of people, and if it's a new group of people, I may think different things. Oh, are they judging me because I'm fat? Are they judging me because I'm losing my hair on top? Are they judging me because, I got this or that going on? And so you start thinking all those negative thoughts. That's just part of life. But what I have to realize, that's not fact. I don't know what you are thinking, okay, unless I ask you and you tell me directly. But I shouldn't operate on the idea that I know what you're thinking. I should operate on the idea of what is the truth. The truth is if I'm somewhere visiting and I've been called to stand up in front of a room and to share with people, there is a reason for it. That God has put me there in that place to share some kind of message, some kind of thought, some kind of idea. God has put me there to share my life. That's what I need to be thinking about. That God has a purpose for me, and God has something for me. Thoughts are just thoughts. Isaiah 55, verses 8 and 9 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." You get those negative thoughts, you start thinking about, what is God's thoughts? What could God's thoughts possibly be because of all this? Okay? And then the third thing, look for God's goodness. Look at James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider an opportunity for great joy." He says, hey, when we deal with difficulties, it's an opportunity. You're looking for good things. You're looking for an opportunity. "For you know that when your faith is tested, endurance has a chance to grow. Let it grow, so when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing." Okay? We find the good in it. We go through this hard battle. We go through this tough time. We deal with somebody and it's tough, and you can learn from it. You can grow from it, and next time you'll have more ability to handle it in a better way. One of the things I've told a couple of my kids, well, I only have 2 kids, but one of the things I've told them about their homework, because, I'm not from here, so I have a different view of homework and things and tests. And if you don't get 100 on your test, if you don't get 100 on your homework, I'm actually more happier than I am if you get 100. Because when you miss something on a test, you go back and study it, then you learn it better. Does that make sense? That's my attitude. That's my philosophy on it. And so I tell them, I said, don't look at this as such a bad thing. Now, yeah, when you get a 58 on a test, I'm going to, give my father thing to you. But it's not bad a thing. Let's just go through it and let's find out what you did wrong. Let's learn from it so the next time you can do better. That's the way we approach things, and that's one of the things we can see the goodness in things that happens, is that we can learn from it and we can grow from it, all right? So, reframing in action. One last set of verses I want to give to you, and then we will be done. And these set of verses are from Philippians chapter 1. And if you look in Philippians chapter 1, we find the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul is in Rome. He's in prison. And as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, this is a good thing because he's always wanted to go to Rome, but it's a bad thing because he's in prison. Because what did Paul like to do? If you read through the New Testament, one of the things you find about Paul is when Paul went into a city, he went to the local places of worship, and he started having conversations with people. If you're in prison, can you have those conversations? Can you go to local places of worship? Can you have those conversations? No. So he was in that place. He was in prison. He knew what was going on. He knew about being in prison there. He knew about his enemies and what his enemies were saying about him, and he knew everything that happened. And most likely, Paul knew that this prison term was going to be the last time he was in prison, because he would get out of prison probably by being beheaded. He wouldn't be crucified. He wouldn't be hung because he was a Roman citizen. He would be beheaded. Quick and painless, quote, okay? And so it was a bad way of things happening, thinking all around him. But he reframed a whole situation into something different. Let's take a look at this. He says, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me is really terrible and awful. Oh, no, wait a minute. That's not what he said. What happened to me is actually served to advance the gospel. Oh, he got rid of the poor me attitude, and he flipped it and said, it's there to advance the gospel. Let's look at the next verse. As a result, it's been clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I'm in chains for Christ. Hey, these guys have to listen to me preach, I don't know, 16 hours a day. I don't think he preached 16 hours a day, but I bet he was pretty close to it. He did sleep some, he did eat some, but he said, these guys got to listen to me. They have heard the gospel message. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. So not only all these guards, they're all captivated with me. They all have to hear the gospel. Everybody else in the palace has heard the gospel. I've been brought before the leaders a few times and sharing the gospel with them. Not only that, those of you who are not in prison, you have gained confidence from this. You're going out there, you're doing things. And he's looking at the positive part of it. It is true that some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry. He said, hey, I'm not going to take, somebody been coming to me and say, do you know what that person is doing? And he's not going, oh, they're stealing my glory. They're stealing my thunder. No, what's he say? He said, it is true that's happening. He recognizes he doesn't lie to himself and doesn't lie to others. But the latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. He said, hey, first of all, there are some who are doing it for the good. Then look what he says. The former, in other words, those who are preaching out of envy and rivalry, says the former out of selfish ambition. He recognizes the truth, doesn't say it. Not sincerely, supposing they can stir up trouble for me while I'm in chains. Again, he's being truthful, he's being honest with it. But then he says this, what does it matter? I like that. What does it matter? The important thing is that every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. From the time that Paul was on that road to Damascus, he was blinded by the light, and he heard Jesus saying, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Ananias came and visited him. From that time that he understood this all, he went and he studied for 3 years. And then his goal was to preach Christ. And he said, hey, let's reframe all these negative things and all these people stealing from my glory and all these people trying to preach and cause that trouble for me by preaching the word of Christ, and all this. He said, let's take it all and let's think about it in a positive way. We've reframed it to this. What? Christ is preached. And because of this, I rejoice, and I will continue to rejoice. For I know through your prayers and God's provision in the Spirit of Jesus Christ, what has happened to me will turn out for my deliverance. Paul has basically said, let's not make this a bad thing. Let's make this a good thing. Let's change the perspective of how we are looking at it. This is how I'm looking at it. This, too, is how you need to look at it. Think about the things in your life. Think about the war that's going on in your mind. Think about those thoughts that are there that are feeding the negative side of everything. And think, can I look at that from a different perspective? Can I think of that in a different way? In a way that will cause me to live my life more for Christ. In a way that will cause me to experience more of the full and abundant life that God wants for me. In a way that will cause me to become less angry, to become less out of control, but to be in more control of the situation. There's a verse in 2 Timothy, in 2 Timothy 1:7. And I'm going to read it to you. It's in 2 Timothy 1:7. And it says this. It says, for the Spirit of God does not make us timid, but it gives us power, love, and self-discipline. And if you are a believer, if you place your faith in Christ, you have the Spirit of God within you. You don't need to be timid, but you need to have that love, that self-discipline there, and you need to change the things in your life that are taking away from that. Let God give you that power it mentions in that verse. Let God work in you to change things. The best way to do that is right here. Remember, this is your sword. This is the most powerful sword there is. And you can cut through anything with it. Get to know it. And I shared with you a few weeks ago that there's just some verses that I've memorized because in the last year and a half, there's things patterns I've seen develop in my life and things I've seen in my life I don't like. And I've went back and I've memorized some verses. I rememorized verses that I memorized before. And it has changed. It has changed me. It has changed how I react to things. Am I there yet? No. But I'm on the journey, and I'm on my way, and I'm trusting in the power of God to work in me, to make me complete, to make me lack nothing. Paul in verse 21 of Philippians chapter 1 says to live is Christ, to die is gain. And Paul's saying to have this type of view, have this attitude, but to know our whole life is about living for Christ, having his power, making the changes in life we need to. We may not ever get there. We'll get there one day when we die and we're made perfect in heaven with God. But that's our struggle that we need to be on. Let's go to God in prayer.